Welcome to today's webinar, Introducing Amazon Lex, a service for building voice or text chatbots. Our presenter today is Hira Niranjan. Hira is a solutions architect with the Amazon Lex at AWS. Today with us, we also have Harshal, Vlad, and Victoria. They will be our webinar moderators who will engage with you and answer any questions you have throughout the presentation. Welcome. The floor is now yours.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next webinar in our series on Amazon Lex. If you happen to catch the last one, you'll have heard Vikram talk about why we built Lex and what we hope you can do with it. My name is Niranjan Hira, and I hope to show you more of what you can do with this new service. So what is Amazon Lex? Imagine using the same high-quality speech recognition and natural language understanding capabilities as Amazon Alexa, but to build voice and text chatbots for your apps. Let's see some of the features that make chatbot development easy with Amazon Lex. So what makes up a Lex bot? Whether it's to book a flight, order pizza, or make an appointment, each bot has a purpose. Lex uses the term intent to describe the action or actions that a bot can perform for the user. And you can have multiple intents. Each intent then corresponds to utterances that represent phrases the user might speak or type. So when you say, "I'd like to book a hotel," or my friend Mike says, "Sudo, make me a sandwich," those are utterances. You don't have to get all of these down. Lex will understand more than just the phrases you provide. Lex uses prompts to ask for information, and the responses are used to fill slots, similar to Alexa. The idea here is to minimize the amount of code you need to write. For example, Lex remembers the context and can manage the flow of the conversation. Well, that's all good, but a good user experience still needs solid design, and that's where you come in. Developers need to think about things like clarity, spontaneity, and competence. For example, are the prompts consistent and clear? Can the bot handle changes in flow? I mean, people don't always speak in the same order that you'd like them to speak. And what about errors, and how are those handled? So let's interact with a bot in order to, just a simple bot that we can use to order a coffee. So you can't really see this, but I'm holding up a trusty Android device that I hope will work just fine. And we're going to see if we can interact with our voice bot. Can I get a mocha?
What size? Tall, medium, large?
Medium.
Would you like that iced or hot?
Iced, please.
You'd like me to order a medium mocha, is that right?
Sure.
You'd like me to order a medium mocha, is that right?
Yes.
Great. Your mocha will be available for pickup soon. Have a great day.
So what we just saw was Amazon Lex in action. We built this bot, and let's talk about how you might go about building something similar. Behind the scenes, when I was talking to the Android device, the audio stream was being sent over to Amazon Lex. Lex then uses that stream, put it through the automatic speech recognition to get text. That text is then parsed by the natural language understanding engine to fill out the intent and slot model based on the utterances and slot values that you provide. Lex then uses Lambda for validation and fulfillment. When we say fulfillment, that's the Lambda function that winds up doing what the bot's designed to do, in our case, ordering coffee. The Lambda responses are then used with Polly, so Lex is in fact integrating with Polly for us, and Polly streams the audio back for voice bots. So next, let's look at what it takes to build one of these bots. So as I was saying, when we first get to Amazon Lex at the console, you can choose one of the sample bots that you can build, and this is a great way to start working with Amazon Lex because it also shows you blueprints of how you can write code to integrate with your bots. But in our case, we'd like to build a custom bot. So let's say we were building this bot that allows us to order coffee. And as you can see, I'm choosing a voice, and there are several voices that you can use, and it is fun to play with these voices. So when we first get started with a new bot, we wind up at the editor. And as you can see, the editor tab is one of several on this console. There are a number of other things you can do here, but let's focus on building our intent. As we just said a minute ago, we're talking about intents that relate to utterances that then use slots, and slots that can have potential slot values that you can use to help Lex find the right values. When you start with intents, there's a list of generic intents that's available to you. Lex was built for developers. So as you can see, you can actually share intents. So what we can do here is we will search for an existing intent. And as a developer, I like to make sure that I know exactly what I'm using. So that's what these versions here help me out with. When I know I'm working with version 14, or version 15, I know I'm getting exactly what I asked for. So when we first get to this intent, as you can see, there's a list of utterances. Utterances don't have to be exactly what you expect users to say. Lex will use the same natural language understanding as Alexa and understand a lot more than what you might expect it to. Having said that, it is useful to include the slot values and slot types that you expect your users to speak with or type with. So as we start with those sample utterances, as you can see here, this example of can I get a beverage type, and you heard me say this to my Android device a few minutes ago, you can see that slots then have beverage types or beverage sizes. And you can also specify whether these slot values are required. And this is how Lex determines the flow of the conversation. I can also say use this priority. So for example, in this case, we're saying beverage type is more important than beverage size. What we're also saying is that when it comes to the different prompts one can use, we can provide multiple prompts. And this is an important way of achieving spontaneity. If your bot said the exact same thing in response to the exact prompt, it would be somewhat robotic. We allow you to provide multiple prompts so that Lex can choose which of these prompts to ultimately speak out or use as text. You also see response cards, and you can see that you can use Lex to build, for example, Facebook Messenger bots. But more on that later. So next, let's look at this confirmation prompt. You can suggest to Lex that before an order is placed or before an appointment is made, you ask the user if this is in fact what the user wanted to do. And as you can see, you can specify slots here as well, and Lex will fill those values in. So in our case, for example, Lex said, you'd like me to order a small or medium mocha, is that right? And if the user says no, you can specify a cancellation phrase. When you first build an intent, you save that intent, and then you start building it. And while that's happening, just like in a cooking show, we'll go over here and test our little bot. So as you can see, what we're saying here is we're going to return parameters to the client, and what that allows us to do is to quickly test our bots without writing any code. So I'm going to say, can I get a chai? And Lex then determines that of the slot types that have been listed, beverage type and beverage size are two slot types that remain to be filled. Lex manages context. Lex remembers the things that users say, and Lex can in fact determine the order in which it goes about asking for these things. So let's say that we want in fact a small chai, and Lex determines that it knows both things that are important. It knows the type of beverage and it knows the size. And so it's ready to place an order. But this time we're going to be rude and say, we don't actually want this chai. And there our cancellation phrase shows up. So let's try this one more time. What if this time we turn around and say everything that Lex already needs to know? So instead of saying, can I get a chai, we're going to say, can I get a small chai? And as you can see, Lex understands that it has already heard the beverage type and the beverage size, and it simply needs to get to the confirmation prompt. And since it's understood our order, we're just going to say Yaman. And as you can see, as Lex's returning parameters decline, just as we asked it to. What you can also do is you can use Lex to get to the next level where you integrate it with Lambda. So this is the test bot that we started out building, CoffeeBot C. And now we're going to make another change to it so that we can add some Lambda code that can be used to validate the values that have been interpreted, as well as place the order. So this AWS Lambda function here is what will get invoked every single time we place an order. As before, we save and build our bot. Now, while that's happening in the background, let's take a look at slot values. So one of the examples that I'd like to use with you is this beverage size. And as you can see, you can either use one of the generic slot types, or you can create a custom slot type. And while Lex will go beyond the values that you provide here, it's important to provide enough values so that Lex understands the kinds of items that are considered a beverage size versus, for example, the kinds of items or the kinds of words that it can associate with a creamer type. Let's see if our bot is ready. And here it is. So this time around, we've made a change to include our Lambda function, and our Lambda function should be doing two different things for us. It should first stop us from ordering anything other than a mocha, because that's all this place can apparently support. And then the other thing it should do is, even though beverage temperature is not a required value here, it should also prompt for beverage temperature. So let's say, as we did before, can I get a medium mocha? It'll prompt us for whether we want it iced or hot. And this, as you can see, isn't something that we had specified using the Lex console. This is something that the Lambda function is influencing. So one of the important things here is that as developers, you still have ultimate control over what Lex will do, but Lex does have some default behavior that it can provide. The other thing that's interesting to see is that we didn't anywhere in this provide a list of phrases that would be considered confirmations. So we didn't say that yep or yaman or yeah are phrases that Lex needs to understand. Lex just does that for us. So the other thing that's important to see is how we can go about building this bot. Because we now have something that works as a chat bot, as a text bot, and you can use a web interface with it. But for our purposes, we'd like to connect this to an Android application. So we go over to AWS Mobile Hub here, and we say we'd like to create a new project. We'll call our project CoffeeBot C. And AWS Mobile Hub prompts us for the kinds of features that we'd like to integrate with this new mobile project. We can choose others, but today we're interested in choosing Lex. We can take one of the sample bots, and again, that's a great way to start. But we've done that before, so we're just going to go to our bot. And if people remember, it's CoffeeBot C. You can see I've done this a few times by now. So we say create a new bot if we'd like to create a new bot at this point, or we simply switch to integrating with our app. And this right here, download the sample app, is what a developer can use to get to the code that you can use to either run or integrate with your own app. Well, how does one do that? So if you download the archive, you'll see a README file, and then this README file walks you through the steps of setting this up in an Android IDE, and then compiling and then running the app. Save us some time. I've already done some of that for us. So let's switch over to Android Studio. Let's run our app in the simulator. This time, we're going to test it in text mode again, but we'll be seeing an app. As you can see, the Android code includes a full project, and you don't really have to change the code significantly in order to just try it out, but it is sometimes helpful to work with the actions and the views and the intents so that you can determine how best to incorporate this into your application. We're back. Sorry about that. So this time around, our coffee bot, which took a lot longer than it usually does, is available. We're going to try it in text-to-text demo mode. So as I said, this is an application that I was able to download from Mobile Hub and just try to use it as is. And we're going to try some of the same prompts that we did before. So as an example, I'm going to say, I want a small chai. But unfortunately, we can get nothing but mochas from this place. So we say, fine, we'll get our mocha. And we'd like that hot this time. So, just like with the voice application that you heard a few minutes ago, the text application allows us to use a text bot to place an order for our mocha. So as a developer, let's go back to where I started. I was able to use the Lex console to create a simple intent, provide some utterances, some slot types and slot values, integrated with some Lambda, and you can use the blueprints in the Amazon Lex console to see great examples of how that Lambda could be used for your applications. You could then test it right within the test console. You could switch over to Mobile Hub, create a new project, and if you set that project up with the Android Studio, you could then use the simulator in text mode. You could also then deploy this to a test device and try out the voice. So we talked about mobile devices, but you can also use Amazon Lex for Facebook Messenger apps. In order to use Amazon Lex for Facebook Messenger apps, you'd also have to set up your Facebook Messenger app with a callback URL. We'll also take a look at some error handling so that you can see that when Lex doesn't understand you, you can prompt the user for clarification. And as before, you can provide multiple clarification prompts. You can also say, for example, that you'd like Lex to ask the user for a repetition 2, 3, 4 times at most, and then ultimately give up. Remember, you can use multiple intents with your applications. And as you continue to make these applications complex, you can specify aliases so integration points are connected to the right versions of the applications. So what are we seeing today? A demo application where we were able to talk into an Android app. You can also do this with an iOS device. You can create Facebook Messenger apps. You can also take a look at other channels. And you can see that you can use this for web console or text-based apps. You can see how Lex does the work of connecting with Polly to make different voices available. You can also see that AWS Mobile Hub, when it's integrating with the Lex bot, works with Cognito user pools in the background, and it also creates associations for you so that all you have to do as a developer is to start with working code. So how do you do that? Well, you can get started with Amazon Lex by signing up for the preview and building your first bot. So tell us more about the kinds of things you'd like to do with Amazon Lex.